Well, everyone, hot off the news that Diablo Immortal has, of course, been banned in the Netherlands and Belgium for how it's monetized, the Bureau of European Consumer Unions has released a full report, right? Basically on what looks to be about loot boxes, but it's far more about how the games industry basically routinely exploits consumers. And now what's happened is 20 organizations from 18 different countries are calling for further regulation, right? Now, the thing is, with these sort of big-ish reports, do the people who do the report actually understand? They know what's going on? And the thing is actually that this is a really good report. This is not messing around. This is actually quality stuff. And we've already seen big wins in countries like Netherlands and Belgium. Now, unfortunately, Netherlands and Belgium, there's just not enough money there for it to be worth doing anything for their benefit. But if you start to throw in France and Germany, Sweden, well, Sweden's not an EU country, but, you know, whatever, they have their heads screwed on. I'm just thinking about, like, major gaming markets. If the UK was to do anything, of course, also not in the EU, but, again, they could do something. They've even had reports looking into things. Well, then things could start to change for some of these companies. Maybe to the point where they would develop a different skew of their game for the markets with regulations. Who really knows? But today, it's time to dive into this report.
Yeah, because historically speaking, when we have covered these reports before that are kind of governmental and union stuff talking about, like, you know, what's happening, we've kind of mostly focused on the UK stuff because that's what's been available and what's been done. But all of that was like, are loot boxes gambling? Let's figure out, and they always fell under the, these are really bad, but we can't call them gambling, so we need the law to change. But this is from a very different perspective. This is literally like, consumers all across the world are literally being psychologically exploited by video game developers and publishers. That's like, they clearly started going, well, what are these loot box things? But they came out at the end going, this is really bad.
Yep.
Something needs to be done.
Parts of our industry are turning evil. Parts of our industry need to be dealt with. Yeah. And reports like this are going to be the spearhead of that from a legislative perspective. We very much hope and potentially, I don't know, can we say expect?
Probably. It's really hard to say because obviously this is across 20 consumer unions across 18 countries in Europe. So it is pretty big. This isn't like just Norway or, you know, just like Germany or something coming up and going, hey, we have a problem. It is literally like everyone's going, this is a problem we need to look at. So hopefully there's something done and it picks up traction.
Yeah, so what it's talking about basically is exploiting cognitive biases and vulnerabilities through deceptive design, using aggressive marketing practices to push sales at every opportunity. Meaningless or misleading transparency disclosures about odds. Because as it turns out in loads of games, whenever they tell you what the odds are, there's actually fine print that means that those are not what the odds are. That might be shocking to you, but that's true. Opaque algorithms, skewed probabilities, using layers of virtual currencies to mask or distort how much things actually cost, the very high cost of freemium and endless grinding, the risk of losing content at any time, and targeting loot boxes and manipulative practices at kids. So, very wide-ranging, and basically what the report wants to see is that video game companies must be banned from using deceptive designs to exploit customers. And that's the sort of thing, maybe in the past I would have said, oh, now I don't know if I want the government banning all of these things because maybe, but nah, fuck it, it's getting too bad. Come in. Government, regulate the shit out of our industry. Fucking please. I want our industry to make less money and for more companies to not be economically viable by doing what they do because they're bad for humanity. Games should be a force for good, not a force for ill. And I mean, even times, you know, I've been at a few UK trade events. I've seen a little talk in a small group of people from a very influential, head of a pan industry or across the industry organization in the UK, advocating for this stuff, saying loot boxes aren't gambling. You know what? I know who you are. Fuck you. You are making our industry evil. In the same way that, like, the UK's got a massive problem with sports gambling, and sports gambling basically is fucking evil, the games industry is turning evil in certain ways. I hate this. Right, all in-game purchases should always be denominational in real-world currency. Then provisions for the protection of minors. Games likely to be accessed by minors, just no loot boxes at all. No random content in exchange for real money. And also zero pay to win. More transparency then, which is, things like explicitly informing consumers of when there is algorithmic decision making.
Wow.
Because turns out the odds of shit that you buy in some of these games that are displayed to you are wrong, and there's actually algorithms based on your player profile that dictate what you get and how that works.
That's why I think this report pretty impressed me, because they used a couple case studies, we'll get into them later, but one was FIFA 22, and they were like, based on what's been said at these different sources, because they sourced everything nicely from reports and like interviews and stuff, they're like, based on what has been said about FIFA at this point in time, and based on the fine print, we have no reason to believe that they are not actively changing probabilities based on your player profile, how likely you are to spend since the last time you got actually lucky in a pack, stuff like that. So it's just the invisible hand behind manipulating the currency, manipulating the probability of you getting the card you want, just to make sure you stay hooked for longer. That stuff's all happening, and consumers are like, but it's just me picking a card out of a pack like I do at a shop. But the people who write in this report are smart enough to go, we fucking know what you're up to.
And of course, saying that consumers should have the option to use games without the algorithmically driven stuff that it influences consumer behavior.
That's a long shot.
Also, better and more enforcement, just quite broadly. And if other things don't alleviate this, a ban of paid loot boxes entirely.
Do you agree with that? I think maybe the algorithmical stuff will be like too difficult to actually get through in terms of banning that, because it's so ingrained. But usually I usually have like a couple of asterisks when it comes to seeing what government or government and government affiliated things want to do. But I'm looking at this and I'm just like, go for it. All this straight down. This happens tomorrow. We have better games in 2 years.
Yeah. And as somebody in the games industry, I don't give a shit if people lose their jobs over this because their games aren't financially as viable anymore, because what they're doing is evil. And I don't think the economy should be rewarding evil practices.
Yep.
Now, ultimately, that's a pretty hilariously, that's a hilarious thing for somebody to say.
Don't be evil.
Yeah, don't use Nestle products, bruh.
Yeah.
Yes, I get it. We live in a society, but still, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about problems. Yeah. So the thing then is this just written by a bunch of bureaucrats who have never seen a video game, don't know what a video game is, and think that we're all playing on the Nintendo Play Toy? Well, the answer actually is no. So here's a few quotes that we think really just will show to you that this is by people with their heads screwed on. Here's one quote. "A large part of the industry's income is likely to stem from problem gamblers rather than from wealthy consumers having a good time." This is on the topic of whaling, right? So they're just saying, although many people choose not to spend money in a freemium game or even small amounts, the industry gains a large amount of revenue from advertising to so-called whales. So they understand whales. They also understand that so much of whaling is not the Saudi princes. It is, in fact, problem gambling just happening again. It's the same psychological stuff. For virtual currencies, they demonstrate a full knowledge that coins, gems, primo gems, orbs of whatever, that's all just Blizzard or whatever company just smearing Vaseline over. This is all money. Yeah, so they understand that.
Yeah, pure smoke and mirrors. They know that. They know exactly what it's intended to do, so they know what they need to do to stop it and how much they need to stop it. It's brutal.
Yeah. So to get on to things then, Deceptive Design. Now this is what I like. They're not just talking about, the loot boxes are bad. No, they are talking about how the actual design of the games is inherently deceptive. Since loot boxes can usually be bought and opened at the click of a button, the friction of making in-game purchases is almost non-existent. They also mention, right, there's basically no safeguards. So with online purchases, the EU has a 14-day cooldown period, and for physical purchases, they have to be delivered or, have to go out and buy them. But with games, there's no right of withdrawal. There's no refunds, there's no nothing. So you just don't have the usual things going on that add some friction or consumer protection when it comes to purchasing goods and services. They may include compelling or confusing visuals. Bing, bing, wahoo. In-game currencies that have multiple exchange rates and obscure the real cost of purchases and entire aspects of game design. If you look at some of the mobile games especially, so many things are just so hard to make comparisons between, are so confusing. You don't know what direction up is. You don't know where north is anymore because you're all turned about, and that is how they want you. Games fabricate time pressure or to influence decision making, or use trusted characters to exchange or to encourage purchases. Right? It's like, oh, that's freaking Aragon wants you to buy a loot box in Lord of the Rings Big War. Cool.
I respect.
I like Vigo. He's a pretty cool dude, and he wants me to buy a box. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Also, the fabricated time pressure.
Yeah.
It's like how many times you even go on a website and apparently the fucking deal's going to expire in 3 seconds, but you refresh and the timer's reset again.
Yeah, there's actually a fun example of that I have where Citus 2, the rhythm game, every time I open it, offers me a 48-hour limited sale for like a bunch of characters. And like, in terms of how I feel about that game and like how it's monetizing content, and it's literally just here's more content you want to buy, I think generally quite fair. I'm happy to buy stuff in that game, but I'm just a little bit pissed off every time I know when this timer runs out, it will reset. Because you've offered me the same 48-hour limited sale for a year.
It's just a rolling
every single
48-hour sale. It's like a furniture store.
Yeah, exactly. And it's bullshit. It is just, they are lying to me to try to make me feel like I should buy this now.
Yeah.
And that's just abusive.
And going through this report, which, it's a very chunky report, so, Matt did a lot of work to condense this down for you. They mention FOMO. They mention sunk cost fallacy, survivorship bias, the gambler's fallacy. They mention those things by name. They describe each of them. They accurately explain how they are used in video games, again showing that this is a competent report by people who actually understand the issue. And that's what's really important, because whenever these reports, or maybe there's like a hearing in front of members of parliament or something, and if the basis they're all operating off is by people who don't really understand games that much, it's so easy for the game companies to just sit down and bat away all the arguments.
Yep.
But when it's accurate, then the hits can land. And they're talking about how the randomness and the design of loot box mechanisms, how that's raised basically accusations of being comparable to virtual casinos. Make no mistake. Yup, comparable indeed.
Stronger, I would say.
Yeah. I mean,
yep.
The casino is just money in, money in, money in, money in, money in, whereas this is money in that's then tied into a whole thing that's trying to work and every freaking brain chemical I can think of. Then talking about how the aesthetic surrounding purchasing and opening the loot boxes have, basically what me and Matt call bing, bing, wahoo.
Yep.
Right? The design of the loot boxes, the whole experience is extremely carefully tailored based on behavioral psychology, player feedback, and user data. The digital nature of games then, of course, means the developers can continually just, have live feedback telemetry for all of this. So they can just be behind the machine, tweaking the knobs. I mean, imagine if you go into a casino, but you have, and I know this kind of happens to a degree in some, but full on, you have like a full player profile. And as you are playing a slot machine, it knows who's sitting in front of it. And it's just changing everything.
Yeah.
Even like it's even all the casino stuff, but it can just be done with so much more specificity within the games industry because of, the tech, the data.
Yep, absolutely. That's another thing I really appreciated about this report is it's very well written and very well considered, but it's like they're afraid. They're admitting this industry has an obscene amount of power. It has so much access to data. It is so much access. All of the fact that says, designed to trigger a dopamine release, that's fairly, people kind of understand that commonly, but that being written down in like an official way is like, that's what they're trying to do. As well as the careful design decisions based on behavioral psychology. That goes from the realm of, hey, do you guys notice this is a bit like a casino? Or this kind of looks a bit like gambling. That's like what a lot of the UK stuff's a bit kind of like. But this is more like, you have the book on how to fucking program humans open, and you're reading from it, and you're using it to take money from them. We know what's going on here. Stop it.
Yeah. And they say it's going to get worse.
Yep.
Because basically on the topic of like the tech and the data, they say industry actors tout the use of machine learning to personalize games based on behavioral data in order to maximize spending. Probabilities can be altered based on user data. And the extent of this in the industry is basically not known. Because it's all a black box. They're talking about the aggressive marketing, the banners, the pop-ups, all of that. I mean, just even try for a more asinine game. Like, just try opening Hearthstone in your phone. Assault. Full frontal assault. They're highlighting how so many of these ads have the ticking timers. It's hard to understand things. exceedingly low drop chances, all of that. They even highlight with sources influencers who post videos of loot boxes in partnership with games and how that abuses, the social network effects. Now they missed. They did miss the Activision exploratory patent, which we don't believe has been implemented, but it's an exploratory patent which is to pair non-payers with payers in multiplayer in order to advertise. So imagine you're playing a game of League of Legends, and this is not something that they do. I'm not saying they do, but it's just imagine, right? And if you're there with a regular skin, the game just tries to surround you with people who just look cooler.
Yeah.
Imagine. You might not think it works, but maybe after 50 matches, you're tired looking like a chump.
Yeah. Imagine even if, it intentionally pairs you with someone who plays a champion that you also play, but with the coolest, most expensive skin in that. That's something they theoretically could do. No one knows that they're not doing it, but they probably aren't because they have other priorities for matchmaking and stuff like that. But it is just that case of, yeah, this is stuff they can do. This is the stuff that they have the power to do, but when will they turn that on? And how much damage will it do?
Yeah. Now, to go into things, there's the final point they make about endless grinding, and then we have to go into 2 case studies with you. The first one is FIFA 22. The second one, it is the innovative mobile RPG with true hero characters that is taking over the world. Oh, look! I've got raids! It's Raid Shadow Legends, folks. Okay, so what they say about endless grinding basically is it's not uncommon for the new players to receive a starting reward of significant in-game value, ensuring smooth and fun gameplay for the first few hours or days. Now, this serves 2 purposes. Number 1, get hooked by investing your time and your effort, and to give the impression that the game is generous the more you play it. But after a honeymoon period, it's over and it's time to start extracting revenue. The frictionless progress of the first few hours comes to the halt, and gradually the player has to spend more and more and more between actions or invest a significant amount of time into grinding. Damn, immortal. By this point, the player is already invested in the game, though, they say, which makes it more difficult to walk away. It's the sunk cost fallacy. Which is terrifyingly present in humans.
Yep.
And the tendency then to add busy work, for which players are encouraged to do, or to just pay real money to skip. They say that has received criticism from consumers, not only of freemium games, but also of major video games selling at full price, to the point at which this practice has also been extended towards. How many, quite a few big games that even have pay to skip stuff, even though you pay a lot of money to get in the first place.
Yeah, that's what I think is great. They've been doing the research. Went, this is happening in full price games too.
They've taken a look at Valhalla.
They basically, yeah. They've just went on Twitter and searched monetization in games. Basically, oh man, brutal.
Now then, as a bunch of sweaty core gamers, we might not all be playing FIFA 22, but I think we're all aware of just how rough it is. Well, it's always nice to have a nice summary of what the latest FIFA has done, because I want to see what the latest innovations in this industry are.
Yeah.
So case study 1, FIFA 22. In 2021, internal documents showed that EA designs the FIFA games to drive people towards FIFA Ultimate Team at every opportunity, and this is where they generate their post-sale revenue. And FIFA Ultimate Team is a large proportion of Electronic Arts' overall revenue.
26%?
Shocking.
Something like that, 1.62 billion, I think, from FIFA Ultimate Team.
Now, of course, the quickest way to get your card packs in FIFA Ultimate Team and the coins, that's just by purchasing and then spending your FIFA points, right? Now, according to players of the FIFA community, the report highlights, obtaining the highest value players through regular gameplay may take thousands of hours.
A little bit like getting your character vaguely close to maxed out in Diablo Immortal.
Yeah.
10 years of dailies.
They, of course, point out how promo packs appear, but are usually only there for 24 hours, which, of course, triggers the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And since the game is competitive in nature, being football, players are going to be matched up with opponents often who have better cards, and that puts them at an in-game disadvantage because they have not paid money. Now, in practice, then, the power creep over the FIFA gameplay cycle means that a card that is valuable or desirable today, of course, will be less desirable in the future. So you might assemble a team you're really, really happy with, but even if it's just by the amount of free shit that just the whole player base gets by just grinding in a few months, my team's not really looking as good anymore. But then you might think, well, okay, but that's unsustainable. Remember, FIFA Ultimate Team is reset every single year. And that means that they can balance the level of baseline progression throughout the 12-month game cycle to be good enough that there's always going to be that pressure to get just a little bit ahead of the curve by buying some packs.
Yep. They are very, very smart. They do not make $1.6 billion a year by accident. They do it very, very intentionally. Very much so.
And here's something that FIFA players themselves might not even be aware of. This is called out by them. As stated in a tiny disclaimer when inspecting FIFA pack probabilities, the, quote, contents of packs are dynamically generated. This is vaguely worded but implies that probabilities may change in real time. The enormous amount of real-time user data that is available to developers means that probabilities can potentially be manipulated in real time in any number of factors, all with the objective of incentivizing and maximizing spending. They then ran just a quick calculation, and I mean, Mortal's going to come in here and wipe the floor with the EA. So they ran a quick calculation, right? So if you wanted the Team of the Year promo card for Kylian Mbappe, who's the cover star, which was prominently featured in the game, you would have to buy an average, get ready, of 847 jumbo rare player packs costing 1.7 million FIFA points, or 13,500 euros. So, man, I hope Kylian has a bit of a, I hope he has a bit of an affiliate deal going on here. He is going to be generating some sheer revenue. I suppose he did get a lot of money to be the pack, the featured
almost certainly
player. But there you go. Now, to reach the average probability to get a single Team of the Year card would take 12,000 games, or around just a cheeky wee 2,500 hours of gameplay. Now, remember, 2,500 hours of gameplay. This is within a game that resets yearly. So this isn't like it's an MMORPG and, over a long period of time. No, it resets every year. Why do people buy this? It may as well be deleted. What is And also, all the cards are unavailable for a week or so.
Yeah.
Now let's go for a game that is, of course, because, we like orcs and elves and nerdy shit. And we watch YouTube videos, so we know about the raids, man.
Yeah.
Basically, there's not a lot to say, but they just accurately describe what a gacha game is and how the gameplay is just designed to funnel people into the gacha purchases. Talking about the aggressive marketing, the FOMO, the sunk cost, confusing as fucking game currencies, probability so low that it's just going to take thousands to get top tier characters that are advertised heavily, or, just literal months of grinding. Saying that the average consumer is poorly versed in understanding probabilities and is highly susceptible to confirmation bias and the gambler's fallacy when odds or other probabilities are involved. And it also just highlights the use of dailies and weeklies to build habits and the bandwagon effect. Here's a good example. Like, all the people who just, they'll do Ice Crown Citadel every single week to get Invincible.
Yep.
Imagine if you could purchase Invincible. Or purchase a booster that would give you a higher drop chance for all cosmetics in a World of Warcraft raid. Now, I'm not saying Blizzard will ever do this for World of Warcraft. I do not expect that. I know the WoW team would fucking revolt if they were asked to do that. In no way do I believe that. But that is what all of these companies making these new games are trying to do.
Yeah. They're just everything that, used to be... Every gaming convention that used to be, solid, everything they can possibly pervert and turn it into a monetization festival, they have, and they will, and will continue to do so.
Yeah.
And just preying on you in every way they possibly can.
And I think ultimately their conclusion is basically the same as mine.
Yep.
The games industry can't be trusted to self-regulate. We need to be regulated. So, to every government, moral game developers should now be advocating for government regulation of our industry because our peers cannot be trusted not to tarnish the whole industry. And it's as simple as that. And I think that if that causes a contraction in the games industry and a loss of jobs, then so be it, because those are ill-gotten gains. It's it's not literal blood money. Yeah. In a few cases, it might be.
That's the thing.
That's all. Yeah.
When you're dealing with things that trigger problem gambling, then there's definitely cases you are doing that.
Yes, there basically is some blood money floating around.
Yeah, because people always joke about that in terms of, the horrendous story. Was it Diablo 3? I think it was Diablo 3, where there were stories of like kids dying from neglect because their parents are playing games. I think it was Diablo. It might have been another game. Like, that's fairly bad, but that is genuinely nothing on the actual gambling addiction stuff.
Yeah. And it's like some people, you know, they'll see a problem gambling, like, just lol, just don't gamble. Yeah. There's like you see somebody who's maybe overweight and doesn't have a great diet, and they're like, oh, just don't eat junk food, bro. Yeah. But it's like, no, there's reasons. You know, for one person it might be junk food. For another person it might be just swiping in a gacha game or something.
Yeah,
it's all in the brain. It's all the psychological stuff. It is preying on people's lack of feeling they have meaning in the world, preying on social status, preying on human fears to extract money. And it's despicable. It's horrible. You know, that Blizzard Entertainment are now even doing this. You know, how can you morally be part of the Diablo Immortal team when this is what your product is doing? Like, that's literally the thing. And it's like, you know what, motherfucker? You have skills that could get you lots of money elsewhere. You know? And I think it's despicable. In the same way, it's despicable that there are people who are like executives at Nestle who will just, you know, bribe a government's military, like Nestle have literally done before. In the same way, it's despicable that there are people who will do that and just like, oh, it's just my job. It's just the bottom line. You know how it is. Well, I think now game developers have to start looking at themselves in the mirror.
Yeah.
About things like this.
Yeah, it's weird because I think there's so much of like, especially game developers and people who are like grown up gamers and like in their like 30s and like late 20s stuff, they'll look and go, no, games are fine. And they'll have this like inbuilt defensive reflex of, no, fuck off, government, games are fine. Because we're used to Jack Thompson. We're used to Mortal Kombat's clearly making all our kids violent. And like, this is a case where that defensive reflex has to die because now there are genuine societal problems being caused here. It's not the games themselves doing it. It's not the video gaming. It's the principles of psychological abusive design being used in the hands of these money-grubbing bastards, to put it lightly.
Yeah, that's it. We're becoming a despicable industry that is a force for ill in the world.
It is honestly speaking, this hadn't really hit me particularly hard because it was always like, you could always alter it, right? When you're looking over at like what NetEase are doing in China, we're looking at like, you know, even MiHoYo's kind of gacha stuff, which is, it has some sort of niceties to it, but it is still just gacha. It's still just preying on lonely software engineers, basically. That's the way that's the way they talk about it.
When they see someone who's a software engineer, Coomer, who, you know, maybe they're for whatever reason facing the fucking, I mean, for that like little example, facing the problem that maybe just isolated lonely people in the world can have. They don't look at that with care and empathy. They look at that with fucking dollar signs.
Yep. Absolutely. And
people who do that are fucking despicable, shameful shitheads, and the world would be better off if they were not doing what they were doing.
And it's easy for people in gaming to other that by looking, going, oh, that's over in the East. Especially Western, obviously, you know, Western developer stuff. That's over in the East. That's despicable. Oh, well, at least they're targeting people and kind of filling their needs in a kind of weird, twisted way. But with the release of Diablo Immortal, and it's just Blizzard, like, there you go, there's Blizzard. And you open up and you see the textbook of psychological abuse. You see the textbook of here's how to make loads of money from preying on people. People aren't actively making the decisions here. People are being coerced into making these decisions by all of these techniques. I don't even know if there's a good analogy for the real world because it is such a unique problem. But it's like, it's real and it's just making games shit. Not necessarily individually making games shit. There will still be good games and stuff, but the industry as a whole is now a fucking force for harm.
Let's just talk about the evolution of storytelling, because I remember I don't remember. This was a long time ago, but I know of the times people are like, oh, novels, those are going to destroy the youth. But if you think about like human like pastimes, right? It's like, you know, sports and stuff, and thankfully, I mean, there's a lot of corruption and money in sports, but, you know, sport's a sport. You play 5-a-side with people. Just it is what it is.
Daily job,
the theater, you know, way back, Greece, people doing the theater.
Oh, no.
And, you know, maybe it's storytellings. Maybe it's gathering around the shaman or something like that. And, you know, time goes on. We get serials that are told in newspapers. We get all those different forms of media. We get books. We get television shows. And the prime evil of the TV show used to be product placement or He-Man being action figures. Like, that's what evil looked like. And, maybe it's bad because Ronald McDonald is going to come in and try to sell your kid a Happy Meal.
Simpler times.
And now, what is the biggest innovation in human entertainment? It is video games. Because for the first time, we are merging books and theater and film TV and a new interactive element and new parts of the human experience, the interactivity of sports can now, it's all bundled in to this like thing with the most potential ever.
Social experience.
And what have we fucking done with it? Some people make games like Disco Elysium that are designed to be fucking powerful experiences, maybe get people to think about things a little bit more. Or Citizen Sleeper. Or if we do our job right, hopefully our game too.
Yeah. No, the
and some other motherfuckers just do what we've talked about here.
Yeah. It's like in a world where games like, I guess the example I'll use is Nier Automata can just completely open my mind to so many different branches and schools of thought of philosophy and drastically change how I think about the world. And explore the world like mentally and thought-wise and open a whole realm of thought. Or you can just play Diablo Immortal, it is effectively, not to be kind of weird and up my own hole about it, but it's basically drugs video game form.
So let's just say, look, if you're the game developer, you're the game director of Ghost of Tsushima, and I know whoever that is would fucking hate me saying this because people don't like to be pit against each other. Sorry, you're morally superior to what Wyatt Cheng and his team has done. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, what you're putting out into the world is morally superior to a transparent money extraction scheme. At some point, we have to be able to call it as it is. And we have to be able to just be like, oh, darn, oh, shucks. Pity those poor game developers. These, the Brad for monetization swung in and did this to them. When ultimately you look at Diablo Immortal and you're like, okay, yeah, but the rifts are designed to basically be playable loot boxes. The game developers made those.
That's
it's not just bolt-on monetization.
Yeah, it's parasitic, it's deep. It's in there.
The game developers are in the party in many cases.
Because they're designed for maximum playability. And maximum playability, as opposed to a very nice experience, is kind of where that enables the parasite to come in and latch on. You're walking around with a massive bag of blood and wondering why there's leeches attached to it, like, basically. Brutal.
Yeah, sure, you might make less money if you just made Diablo Immortal and sold it to people for like $30-$40. And maybe it just had some, or whatever, and it had some cosmetics in it or something. But at least should be well within your rights to have a clean fucking conscience and rest easy at night. That's basically the situation. The games industry needs to be regulated. We cannot be trusted. Those of us in the games industry who do not want bullshit literally do not have the power to stop peers from doing it. And because it is completely disproportional in what the companies can do to the players in order to get money from them, they're too powerful. This is actually now a case where we do need to go to government, because one of the great jobs of government, actually, because it's very easy to just be sort of default anti-government all the time, and I totally get that. I see that 11% of my tax bill just goes to paying interest on national debt. I'm like, if I manage my finances like that, I'd be in trouble. But the government should, via the democratic process, come up with the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And then enforce the rules of the game. Yep. Right now, the rules of the game aren't good enough. The government needs to change the rules of the game and enforce the rules of the game. Like, I would say in this case, at least in this limited specific scenario, the honourable and decent Netherlands and Belgians.
Yep.
And Belgium,
actually,
like what they've done.
Literally, as we're sat here, Spain have announced they're banning loot boxes as well.
Good on you, Spain.
God.
Good on you, Spain.
Yeah, so that is, according to local authorities, a new law will regulate all mechanics which have real economic value. No real super text on this specifically yet, but yep, the new law will regulate other features with economic value in a real or virtual market, including cryptocurrencies and NFTs. So there you go. There's loot boxes, Spain now. What do we need? France, Germany, the UK? When does it take over?
And the thing is, sometimes, like, you can take the pure libertarian position and things, and, you know, I think in that there's, like, this really big nested optimism. It's like, there's, you know, because optimism and cynicism are kind of like sides of a coin. Usually cynics are kind of optimists who just see how it really goes.
Oh, yeah.
And you can sort of be very, you know, libertarian about all of that. But ultimately, at some point, you need to be pragmatic. You know, you might come in and think, sugar. It's within someone's right to have as much sugar as they want. But then maybe do you need to be a pragmatist and think, okay, well, if that sugar stuff's becoming a big problem, and here's the obesity crisis, and here's all of these problems, and this is costing the health service that much, and then that's actually paid for by people's taxes, including the people who haven't actually incurred that cost. Well, okay, in that case, while it's better for the individual rights of that, you know, how do you work these things out? At some point, you need to be pragmatic, and you need to weigh up the positives and the negatives. And in order to accept a whole bunch of positives, you have to be able to accept a few little negatives. In this case, we need the positives of the games industry not having blood on its hands, and the negatives will be that people will lose their jobs. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because it's just not sustainable. It can't go on. And good on Netherlands, Belgium, and now Spain.
Yeah, gotta take the long-term view over the short-term view. And the long-term view is game's good. Short-term view, effectively stealing people's money by abusing their brains is not good. Not at all.
Yeah.
God, I can't wait. I can't wait for more. I cannot wait for more. If by the time Overwatch releases, was it 2014? By the time Overwatch 2 releases, Blizzard have to remove the loot boxes from that game. I will be shirtless in the street singing. Absolutely.
Because look, what happens if it's hit Spain? All right. What happens if it hits France? What happens if it hits Germany?
Yeah.
You know, what happens if, you know, it starts in the European Union, a whole bunch more talking starts happening about it.
When does the tide turn, like it?
You know, I don't think this shit's going to change in the US.
No, never.
Just don't think it's particularly set up that way. Maybe state laws could do that. So you could maybe say, like, well, you'd say, oh, well, what of the state of California? Of course, being, you know, supposedly, you know, supposed to be a very progressive state and all of that. And, you know, they're sort of standing up they're supposed to do all of that. I mean, all the game developers are in California, so you could be sure that, you know, even some Democrat comes in, it's like, oh, enough of this, bad for they're going to get regulated, or no, they're going to be lobbied to shit.
Honestly,
it's not going to happen.
At this point, I think the industry's powerful enough in California, they would just assassinate them. It would just be, and the governor...
Not a true statement of fact.
Yeah, and the government who announced loot boxes has just been, you know, has just fallen over in the street. Oh no, what happened? Oh, honestly, it'd be that's the amount of money that's going on, right? That's the thing where you see that and you're like, you see that in like a mob movie, you're like, oh, of course the person who wants to stop this is going to get killed. You know, you see that in like some big car manufacturing things, like, oh, we're going to, you know, introduce this union for car manufacturing employees, and people start to go missing or silently stop talking about it. There's more money in games than there ever was in any of that. So obviously I'm not saying that's the case, but I wouldn't be surprised.
We're being joking and hyperbolic.
Yeah, of course.
Matt's not saying that the Blizzard Entertainment assassins are going to start coming for people.
Yeah, no.
I mean, if they were, we might be top of the list at this stage.
Yeah, I might have to write a little note. Like,
what was your man? Was it Dave 2GG?
Greg 2G.
Greg 2, yeah, Greg 2G. Oh, because it's 2 G's and Greg. I mean, he's gone.
There's 3 G's and Greg.
Greg, actually. Oh shit, 3. Right, yeah. Our boy Triple G. I guess Quad G. Yeah. This is now 5 Gs. He's top of the assassin list. Like,
yeah,
you know, calling out all those Reddit posters. This is $100,000. Oh, you're gone.
Yeah. God.
Yeah. Okay, we should probably bring the conclusion to its conclusion.
Yeah.
Just like, man, we have to be real about this stuff.
We do. Yeah.
What's going to happen in 10 years? What's going to happen in 15 years? What's going to happen when the machine learning gets better? Like, how far do you think they want to push this?
Yeah, I mean,
come on.
We went from Horse Armor DLC to $100,000 pay to win mobile ARPG, both in big name franchises, in 16 years.
Final thing. I'm not going to name names, but I bring this up because this won't apply to the majority of this audience, but you need to know about it. Because I think our audience, most, like, you know, similar to our age, like late 20s, early 30s, you know, maybe starting to have kids, maybe not, but... There's one group of people who I think we don't think about that much, and, you know, you could call them the Zoomers, the TikTok generation, you know, the maybe people, they're like 14 to 22 or whatever right now. And it's one of the things that sort of started to happen because, you know, like I'm 27, going to be 28 soon. And, you know, just in our own industry, you know, we see people who are now coming into the industry, they're like 20. Yeah. And, you know, they're people who are just used to TikTok. It's like literally what they grew up with. They are used to certain practices. And it's actually to the stage where people struggle. See something like Lord of the Rings. It is literally not bing, bing, wahoo enough for the hyper engagement TikTok generation to fucking cope with sometimes. And I have seen in my own personal life, real life examples of this. People for whom social media and, you know, all these like, you know, TikTok and stuff, I would basically say it gives people functional ADHD. And there is no fucking coincidence or no surprise then that actually diagnosis rates for a lot of those things are way going up right now.
No, that's exactly how I would frame my own change over the past maybe 5 or 6 years from playing different video games. I've definitely went from my like mental profile of thinking has definitely changed for the worse.
I'm so much more stupid than I was 5 years ago.
Definitely functional ADHD is how I put it. Yep.
Yeah. So that's like one little example of how all these modern trends are changing people, but it's norms, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
The things that we've talked about here, those are going to be the norms for a new generation. Sometimes people talk about how in, say, Korean MMOs, it's very normal to just pump money in because it's a prestige thing. And that it's just like kind of an accepted thing, right? You pump money in, you get the cool thing, prestige. The other players, they don't look at you and think, oh, fucking pay to win, piece of shit. No, they look at you and like, oh, prestige. And it's more normal over there. So the things that we are shocked by, that we make videos that are now 42 minutes long on, these will be normal and uncontroversial to younger generations if we fail to stop the evil now. And that is why I think there was a moral obligation to be really fucking serious about this shit. It's bad for humanity. And that's what a large section, a large proportion, maybe even soon, the majority by revenue of the games industry is. I'm happy to say that soon the majority of the games industry by revenue is bad for humanity. And
at this rate, fucking by employee count as well.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the sheer scale that this stuff all has to take to make.
And like, this isn't Jack Thompson alarmism. Like, this shit's happening.
Yeah, this is like quantifiable. We watched the Horse Armor DLC in 2006, 16 years. I'm going to be playing video games for hopefully more than 16 years. I don't want to see what the next step is. I don't want to see that at all. Because obviously there's the kind of altruistic view of this is bad for humanity. There's also the very personal view of this shit's making video games really fucking bad.
Yeah, and like look, really if you're like watching this and you're 19, you think we're just two angry old men. Like, we're 27. Well, I'm 27, you're 28. Like, we're not.
Yeah.
And we saw the whole progression of when I started playing games, it was box price and expansion. We have lived through the entire development of video game monetization. And we have lived through it as active players of the most recent trendy games. So I think we're in a pretty fucking good position to see where things are going because we felt it. Yep. And that's basically it. Right, I'm going to call the video to an end. This is serious shit, and I guess for the final thing, fucking raise a glass to Spain.
Absolutely, raise a glass to Spain and to this Norwegian report that went around the EU Consumer Organization, because I already saw someone link this because there was the announcement from the Spanish, I can't remember what title they had, but whoever announced this on Twitter, and I immediately saw people link this report in the replies.
Yeah. Hey, right, final thing.
Yep.
We will link this report. I don't want to just ask you to do things, but I am going to. Your local member of parliament or just whatever it is in your country, send this report. And if there's any way, I don't know if it's an email or a letter, just say, I love the games industry. Games are a force for good. They have taught me all of these great things and enriched my life. I am now a concerned gamer who is scared of what evil the industry that I really enjoy is putting out. And maybe if more of us can do this, then more countries like Spain and Belgium and the Netherlands, they will step up to the plate and regulate this industry that is in dire need of regulation. So that's the final thing. We put out a video yesterday. We're going to put one out tomorrow. Sub to the channel. Check out the stuff. We'll see you next time.